Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Council meeting. The Local Government Act 2020, the Act, Section 25, states the election of the Mayor must be chaired by the Chief Executive Officer. Part B, Section 4 of the Governance Rules, states that the Chief Executive Officer must facilitate the election of the Mayor in accordance with the provisions of the Act. Once the Mayor has been elected, they will assume the position of Chair. As the meeting chair, I give my consent for this open council meeting to be streamed live, recorded and published online in accordance with council's live streaming policy and governance rules. The chair and or the CEO have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Thank you. The COVID-19 Omnibus Bill 2020 provision allows council meeting attendance by electronic means. The requirement of the meeting being open to the public is satisfied by the meeting being streamed live to council's internet. In the event of technical issues with the live stream, the meeting will be adjourned. Councillors are deemed as being in attendance if they can hear the proceedings, they can see other members in attendance, and can be seen by other members. They can be heard to speak. A reminder to please turn off all mobile telephones, or in the case of an emergency, please advise the chair and switch to silent mode. I would now like to call on Councillor Bauer to read the statement of acknowledgement. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The Vasco Shire Council acknowledges the Bunurong as the traditional owners and custodians of the lands and waters, and pay respect to the elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions and the culture and the law. Vasco Shire Council celebrates the opportunity to embrace and empower the Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Island communities in their diversity. Vasco Shire Council will create opportunities for future recognition and respectful partnerships that will honour the traditional owners and custodians and Aboriginal and or Torres Strait Islanders peoples.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. I would now like to call on Councillor Holstead, who will read the councillor statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All members of this council pledge to the Vasco Shire community to consider every item listed on this agenda based on the individual merits of each item without bias or prejudice, by maintaining an open mind and disregarding councillors' personal interests so as to avoid any conflict with our public duty. Any councillor having a conflict of interest in an item will make a proper prior disclosure to the meeting and will not participate in the debate or vote on the issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. We have no apologies for this council meeting and we have no declarations of interest. I'd like to now go to the confirmation of minutes and the council meeting held on the 15th of September 2021. The minutes of the council meeting held on the 15th of September 2021 be confirmed. Can I please request a councillor to move the motion? Councillor Kent, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Ronnie Bauer. All those in favour? Carried. I'd now like to move the minutes held on the council meeting held on the 20th of October 2021, that the minutes of the council meeting held on 20th of October 21 be confirmed. Do I have a councillor who would like to move that? Councillor Ronnie Bauer, and a seconder. Councillor Leticia Laing. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Now I'd like to move to public question time. I will read out the questions and our General Manager, Business Transformation, Wayne Mack, will read the response. So we have two questions for today. The first question is from Graham Jolly, and the topic is capital works projects. The question is, Council reported carryovers to 2021-22 of $30 million, $30.387 million, 102 projects. The budget 21-22 allocated funding of $30.052 million for capital works. The overall allocated funding is now $61,206,892. What is Council's plan to reduce the capital works projects carryovers to $18,699,000 as indicated in the new long-term financial plan 2021-31? And the second part of the question is, why is Council reporting 12 projects 100% completed with an approximate carryover of $3,356,737 shown as deferred projects 3 months into the new year, when these projects deferred are not as expected through the budget or by all the council, or by all the elected councillors to be deferred? Mr. Wayne Mack.
Through the Chair, a detailed response to these questions will be provided in the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to question 2 from Heather Livingston. The topic is safety to community during schoolies. What strategies will Council implement ensuring Cowes residents can have safe access along the Esplanade/Jetty area during schoolies weeks? Last year, despite daily cleaning, the area was constantly littered with broken glass, making it extremely unsafe for people walking with dogs and children. Mr. Wayne Mack.
Through the Chair, Council has worked closely with youth-focused service organisation Red Frogs and Dancewise, local businesses and importantly local emergency services, including Victoria Police and Ambulance Victoria, in the lead up to School Leavers Week 2021. Planning continues to focus on harm minimisation, which will see an additional proactive presence in Cowes throughout School Leavers Week to ensure community safety. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Now move to petitions, joint letters, deputations and correspondence, which there are none. We now move to notices of motion, and we have one notice of motion today, 338/21 Inverloch coastal erosion. I would now like to invite Councillor Laing to move and read the motion without speaking to it.
Thank you, Ms. Wasty. This motion is about calling for urgent coastal protection works at the Inverloch Foreshore.
Okay. Can I have a councillor who would wish to move the motion? Councillor Laing, sorry, to second it. Councillor Kent. Thank you. Would you now like to speak to the motion, Councillor Laing?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Inverloch Surf Beach is the beating heart of Inverloch, and the main reason tourists go there to spend their tourism dollars our Shire is so reliant on. The economic value of the beach for Inverloch has previously been estimated at $4 million a year, but it could be a lot higher. For me and many others in our community, you can't put a price tag on our coastlines and beach way of life. This motion is not just about preserving Wreck Creek, although that creek is a vital part of the area's local ecosystem. It is about holding the line until we have a good picture of how this erosion is going to unfold. The community has expressed their frustration to me at the delays on this assessment and whether it can deliver on protecting that part of our coastline. The community wants some reassurance from our state and federal governments that when this coastal hazard assessment is completed, there will be some beach left to protect. We are very grateful for the $1.15 million in funding from the state government to do the assessment and for coastal protection works in front of the Inverloch Surf Lifesaving Club. It is evident that the geotextile protective barrier and sacrificial sand at the site has been working. We are also grateful for the injection of funding from the federal government to protect other coastlines in our Shire. Council officers and stakeholders have worked hand in hand with the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning for this assessment and will continue to do so. I commend the state government for undertaking this strategic work. But it seems that somewhere along the way, we have forgotten that since 2010, we have lost 70 metres of the Inverloch Surf Beach coastline and about 2.8 hectares of dune vegetation have been swept away from Cape Patterson, between Cape Patterson Road and the Surf Club. We are but a few storm surges away from losing this vital part of our coastline and what is a key buffer for residents along Surf Parade. While this key piece of work occurs, the community will need reassurance that goes beyond monitoring the loss of the coastline. I urge councillors to support this motion to enable our mayor, whoever that may be, to request both state and federal ministers to protect our beach and the beating heart of the community. And I'd just like to add apologies for the interruptions. I have my own personal crowd here at home.
Thank you, Councillor Laing. Councillor Kent, as seconder, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Ms. Wasty. I feel very fortunate in being able to support this motion from Councillor Laing. In just a couple of brief words, and that is action. All right, it is time for action. We're running out of time. Both federal and state need to jump in and start doing something here. We keep on seeing all the briefs, all the reports, but now is time for action. And it's time for action for the whole of Bass Coast, you know, from Jangerup, Grantville, all the way down to Cape Patterson, Inverloch, that whole area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Halstead.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Wasty. I'd like to thank Councillor Laing and congratulate her for the work she's put into this motion. Mother Nature is not waiting for the outcome of a coastal hazard assessment. She's moving swiftly and showing her power visibly for all who remain climate emergency skeptics. We're experiencing her fury firsthand right across the Bass Coast. And if we continue to endure delays, there could well be nothing left to assess. There is an immediate need for interim measures across the Shire and a long-term commitment required for not only Inverloch Foreshore, but as Councillor Kent pointed out, Jangerup, Kilcunda, Grantville, just to name a few. The content of this motion is a good start, but I would warn it is just that, the start. I congratulate all those working hard on the ground to find answers and commend the motion to councillors for adoption and the Minister for immediate action. I'll be supporting your motion, Councillor Laing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Whelan?
No, I just.
No, you've got your. Okay, thank you. No other councillors wish to speak to the motion. Councillor Laing, would you like to make some closing comments before we take it to the vote?
Thank you, Ms. Wasty. This motion doesn't seek to diminish the issues of coastal erosion around the Shire that Councillor Halstead has alluded to. It does seek to address, perceived gap in funding and hopefully some urgent works that can be undertaken to protect this vital part of our community.
Thank you. All councillors in favour of the vote, please show your hands. Carried. So, Part G, Mayor and Councillor reports. As per our practice during virtual meetings, councillors will forego speaking to the Mayor and Councillor reports. These will be included in the minutes of the meeting. Item H1, reports requiring council decision. H1, determination of the period of office of Mayor and Deputy Mayor. Mr. Mack to introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this report is to determine the period of office for the Mayor and Deputy Mayor in accordance with Section 26 of the Local Government Act. The report recommends the Council set a term of 1 year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I now have Councillor move and second the motion. Councillor David Rooks and seconder Councillor Ronnie Bauer. Councillor Rooks.
Thanks, Ms Wasty. Other than supporting the recommendation, I have no other comment to make.
Councillor Bauer.
I think this is a good way to go about it. We have a new mayor coming in, and there's no reason why, if the new mayor does a good job, we can't re-elect him the year after. I support this recommendation.
We'll now move to vote on the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Item H2, election of the mayor. Mr Mack will introduce the report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this report is to elect the Mayor in accordance with Section 25 of the Local Government Act. The process to elect the Mayor will be undertaken in accordance with Council's governance rules. Once the Mayor is elected, they will assume the position of the Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have received one written nomination in line with the governance rules for the appointment of the Mayor. Councillor Whelan has been nominated by Councillor Tessari, and the nomination has been seconded by Councillor Bauer. Therefore, Councillor Whelan has the absolute majority of votes and is declared elected as Mayor. Councillor Whelan, you may now assume the position as Chair, and congratulations. And we will now take a short break, and I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Tessari in his 3 years tenure as Mayor of Vasco Shire Council. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes, we just have a little suspension in proceedings. It was not intended to go off air, so welcome back. And we're going to suspend the proceedings in terms of the formal part of the meeting and allow councillors a few minutes for councillors, if they had comments to make in relation to the outgoing mayor, then this is an opportunity to do so. Does anyone want to kick us off? David? Oh, sorry, Councillor Rooks, I better get used to that.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. Thank you, Brett, very much, or Councillor Tessari, for the year that we've spent together. It's an unusual job, the councillor's role. I didn't know too much about it when I came in, and you provided me with the necessary support that I needed at the appropriate times. You made yourself available when I needed you, and I did really enjoy the chats that we had. So thank you very much.
Thanks, David.
Councillor Kent.
Brett, and I'll call you Brett, I won't call you councillor. 5 years, Brett. Didn't know who you were on that first day. Thank you for the time. Thank you for your service. That 1 year that I had with you as Deputy Mayor, it was just great. And it developed me so much. And again, just thank you for your time, and I wish you all the success for the future.
Thanks, Bruce.
Councillor Lasser.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As an outgoing Mayor, Councillor Tessari, thank you for and congratulations on your term as Mayor and your leadership to Vasco. Thank you.
Thanks, Claire. Can I just, oh, sorry, yep.
Yeah, Councillor Holstead.
Yes, hello, Brett. I just wanted to say a big thank you for all your effort. It's been difficult as a new councillor, having the opportunity to get in a room with you. Obviously, we've all been online, but I've found you to be an incredible human being, especially with a couple of us have gone through some trauma over the last 12 months, and you've always been there to bolster our mood and pick us up when we're feeling a little down. I suspect that the community has had that same feeling from you, and have loved every minute of the support you've given them. So I congratulate you and wish you all the very best in whatever you're choosing to do moving forward. And I'd also like to really congratulate Michael Whelan on his appointment as our new mayor. Yes, these things behind the scenes take place with negotiations, and there was a little bit of negotiation going on behind the scenes. But I just want to say that I think from my perspective and possibly from my fellow councillors, Mr. Whelan is going to make a fabulous mayor, and we'll all be getting behind him as we approach a state and federal election, and he's going to need all the support he can get to ensure that Vasco's community come out in front. So I'm really looking forward to doing exactly that, Mr. Whelan. You have my support moving forward. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Laing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Congrats, Michael. And congratulations, Brett, for being able to finally hand it over to someone after hogging it for 3 years. Having said that, I'm being completely facetious, Brett. It's been so great being a first-time councillor and having you not only as the mayor, but as a fellow ward councillor. You really are a champion for our Shire. You are our prime cheerleader, and it's just been lovely to be able to catch up occasionally, even in person. You're just generally a really nice person as well, so that has just made it fantastic. And your leadership, your clear direction and vision for the Shire has, I hope you can feel really proud, because you should be. It's come to fruition in such a good way, and I think it's onwards and upwards as well for us. But you've really laid some amazing foundations in the past 3 years, and I've had a great time hanging out with you and working with you, and I think the kids are going to miss it too, hanging out as well. So thanks very much for your time and dedication.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other? Yes, Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The full version of this speech will be in the council reports. Governance said, no, you can't speak for that long, so I've had to abridge this. Fellow councillors, officers of Vasco Shire, ladies and gentlemen watching in the gallery. Few elected officials have had the luxury of leaving the job on their own terms. Councillor Brett Tessari is one of those rare fish. After 3 terms, he has handed over the baton. Councillor Tessari's career has been a stellar one for our Shire. A true Wani boy, elected in 2014 to represent the Bunurong ward, and was elected mayor in 2019, and he was re-elected in 2020 and 2021. The way the community appreciates him was reflected in the 2020 council elections, where he was elected with a landslide 50% of the ward's first preferences. His achievements are too many to list here. He was even brave enough to tell the Lord Mayor of Melbourne, Sally Capp, in her own town hall, and I quote, "Your coffee's shit," prompting her to publicly acknowledge this critical problem and bending the COVID rules, allowing the delegates to bring their own takeaway coffees into the town hall. One small step for man, a giant leap for Bass Coast. After that performance, I think the MAV was too scared not to award him the honour Mayor Emeritus. He has seen and steered us through some of our Shire's biggest challenges in recent years. The COVID pandemic put all the council plans on its head, Balancing both the fears of the community and the needs of the council is not easy. The Shire's economy has been shattered by the lack of visitors, yet his positive personality has kept us all going. His commitment to community causes has amply been demonstrated. For example, he supported a local ballet school by jumping off the Inverloch pier in a pink tutu to raise money. And remember, he cannot swim. I can't recall what was more entertaining, seeing him in the pink tutu or his struggle to get to the rescue boat before he drowned. And just last week, he ran 10K to raise money for 2 core pulse machines for the Ambos, raising $45,000. It was my privilege last year to nominate him for his 3rd successive term as mayor, so as to give us council continuity and especially for us newbie councillors. I will put on record, if he wanted a 4th term, I would have happily nominated him again. On a personal note, Brett, you and I have formed a special rapport. I think that's in part due to the fact you are no longer the shortest person in the group and get to stand in the 2nd row in photographs. I'm chuffed that you call me often to gauge my opinion on this or that issue. I've always felt that I could reach out to you at any time to do the same. Though you do keep reminding me, 10:30 at night is too late, and Sunday is a day of rest for family, and I have to switch off. When I had my stroke in April this year, 15 minutes after I arrived in the Montague Hospital, you were there at my bedside. You read me the riot act and told me to switch off and rest. You also called me every other day to inquire on my progress. This was way above your call of duty and galvanized my perception of you not only as a mayor, but as a person. Brett, I'm proud to call you my friend. On behalf of all the present councillors and the past councillors, I wish to say a thank you, a heartfelt thank you. Lastly, Councillor Tesari, all I have left to say to you is now, Councillor, you're on mute.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Bauer, and I'm thank you for giving us the abridged version. And I will give Councillor Tesari the right of reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Ronnie. That was beautiful, and I must admit I teared up. So that was very nice. Thank you to everyone for those really kind words. Obviously, you do this job for 3 years. You do it because you enjoy it. I really did enjoy getting to know all of you guys, and I have thoroughly enjoyed representing the community for the last 3 years. But I have, it is time to step away. I've got sick of hearing my own voice, so I know you guys must be sick of hearing me as well. But I'm really, really confident moving forward that our new mayor, Councillor Whelan, will definitely lead this group in what is going to be the most important year, probably certainly the last 4 years, going to be the most important year moving forward, and that's 2 elections. And I know, Michael, you are an incredibly strategically smart thinker, and I know you will head us in a fantastic position and put us in the best spot possible moving forward. And I wish you all the best. You have my utmost confidence and support moving forward. And I really hope you enjoy the time. Congratulations, Michael.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tesari. And yes, I agree, it's a hard act to follow, and it's, as they say, thanks for the memories. But, you know, I echo the words of, we've just been down the street for lunch today, and everyone knows Brett, because it is Brett down the street, and they all want to have a piece of him, and he forever the mayor of Wonthaggi. But there's probably, you know, there may well be, this is not the end of the statement. There's probably an underline or two due. But I just wanted to say something else other than a heartfelt thanks, and thanks for the transition that we're undergoing and the really good spirit that we're doing this in. And just for the record, I didn't pull Councillor Bauer up on his use of that particular word, because it did reflect accurately, as I understand it, the conversation that occurred with the Lord Mayor. But anyway, just a couple of things to say from my point of view, and thanks, councillors, for allowing me to be the mayor of this incredible place. And this Basque Coast has been a leader now for some time, and I hope that we will continue that and go from strength to strength. It's a diverse area. We've got the hill country, the Bunurong coast, the waterline, Phillip Island, and all those places in between. And we're a great volunteering shire as well, being above the state average in that area. Our industries have been under stress, and we need to continue to assist them and find ways to do that. As Councillor Sassari mentioned, we're a very challenging year coming up. We're already in it, really. We're effectively in a federal election campaign now. It's unofficial, but by May that will be determined, and of course the state election by November next year. So we need to really be focused, and we pivot around those issues of aquatics. We've never been in a stronger position strategically to argue our point in relation to aquatics. The regional gallery, well, I was lobbied on that the other day at a wonderful, the closing of the Kernahan exhibition, or the Smith collection, I should say. And yeah, let's get on with it. Let's give that a real red hot go as well. Coastal erosion, enough said on that today, but I'll be saying more on that as we go along. But it's fair to say that our coastline is crumbling, and we really need to be upping the ante in that area. It's been a subject of much debate here in Australia, but also at COP26, that we really need to be seeing money flowing into the whole areas of the adaptation to climate change. The climate change itself is going to present us incredible challenges, as it has been this year with 2 extreme windstorms that we've had. And if we get the heat waves that have occurred in the northern summer of Europe and North America this year, we need to be prepared for those sorts of things. Opportunities, and that's really where we should I'll finish this, is that climate change presents incredible opportunities. Australia, for whatever reason, is not picking those up at the moment, but we're being led by the money, being led by Twiggy Forrest, we've been led by Mike Cannon-Brooks, Sun Cable, providing 25% of Singapore's power from power generated in North Australia, for example, green hydrogen. And there are opportunities here around recycling, let's say, of the plastics that otherwise are left to rotting paddocks and things like that. FOGA, why aren't we doing it here? They're green jobs, and that's the sort of thing we need to be looking at. The clean food trail, or when I say the food trail, clean green branding. So they're the sorts of things I'll be pushing, as well as a green carbon fund and a lot of other things. And I want to say, councillors, I intend being incredibly collaborative, and we'll be looking to catch up very soon, one-on-one and as boards and that sort of thing, and we'll continue that as we go through this year. But thanks very much for your trust, and let's get back to the main agenda now. We'll resume our agenda, which brings us to the election of Deputy Mayor. I'll ask Mr. Mack to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations. The purpose of this report is to elect a Deputy Mayor in accordance with the Local Government Act. The process to elect the Deputy Mayor will be undertaken in accordance with Council's governance rules. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. The CEO received 1 nomination in line with the governance rules for the appointment of the Deputy Mayor. Councillor Leticia Laing has been nominated by Councillor Sassari, and the nomination has been seconded by Councillor Rooks. Councillor Laing therefore has the absolute majority of votes and is declared elected as Deputy Mayor. Congratulations, Councillor Laing. And you don't get to speak at this point in time, but we'll arrange. There'll be plenty of opportunity for that as we go through the agenda. So our next item is H4, appointments to council committees and external committees, and I ask Mr. Mack to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to appoint the Mayor and councillors as representatives to council committees and external committees in order to meet legislative obligations and to enhance involvement in community activities and advocacy on behalf of the community. These will shortly be displayed on the screen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We'll just wait for those, if we're going to have success at getting those on the screen. There we go. So all of those committees are nominated. One of those has ceased to exist, not applicable, and the first one is to be arranged further. And I request a councillor move the report. Councillor Rooks, and seconded Councillor Holstead. Councillor Rooks, do you wish to speak?
Yes, I've been fortunate enough to be part of a number of the committees in the last year, and I've really enjoyed that role and the connection it gives me with the community. I thank all those people. Most of the people that are in the groups that I'm part of are volunteers. And as Mayor Whelan said before, we are a huge volunteer community. So thank you to those people. And you don't just come as, a lot of you come as expert volunteers as well, which I really appreciate. I get to listen and learn about the community that I'm in through you people that are experts. And hopefully we can get to transfer that information to the staff and help them build a good case for the future of Bass Coast. So thank you for those people that I've been involved with. And I look forward to working with you again because I'm basically on those groups again. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Holstead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councillor Rooks. I've really enjoyed my time on the small committees that I am a part of. With Western Port Ward, we have a lot of different community groups and residents groups. So I've kept my committees to not too many, but I'm really happy with the ones that I'm on, and I'm looking forward to catching up with everybody again at the meetings to into this year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holstead. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, we'll put the motion. Those in favour? That's carried. Which brings us to item H5, which is the annual report for 2020-2021. And I'll ask Mr. Mack to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to consider the annual report 2020-21, which is required to be presented to the community by the Mayor under the Local Government Act 2020. The annual report provides a snapshot of Council's operation, publicly reports achievement of the Council plan, reports on the LGPRF measures, and Council's financial performance. I am pleased to advise the Council received unqualified audit certificates from the Victorian Auditor General's Office for its annual financial and performance statements. Following consideration by Council, the annual report is required to be submitted to the Minister for Local Government. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Councillors, in line with the requirements of the Local Government Act 2020, I hereby formally present the annual report 2020-2021 to Council. And I'd like to invite Councillor Sassari to move the motion. And as the Mayor for the 2020-2021 period, share some highlights of Council's performance. We'll take, you move that, Councillor Sassari. So moved. And the seconder? By a nose, Councillor Laing and Councillor Sassari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to share some of the achievements of Council over the last 12 months, closing off the Council Plan 2017-2021. When we first adopted the Council Plan 2017-2021, we never imagined that we would be delivering the last 18 months through a global pandemic. I'm really proud of the way that Council has responded and what we've been able to achieve over the last 12 months. It's been a year full of challenges as the COVID-19 pandemic continued to impact our lives. Throughout the 2020-21 year, Council worked hard to help local businesses and the community adapt to the uncertainty presented by the pandemic. We waived fees, funded business and community resilience grants, and worked with our local businesses and tourism associations to create outdoor dining spaces across the Shire. We continue to strengthen our advocacy program and were successful in obtaining funding for a large range of local projects linked to COVID-19 response and recovery, sporting and recreation, arts and culture, and sustainability. At a federal level, Council was successful in advocacy for road infrastructure funding. We were also successful at state funding projects to assist in our growth, including funding towards construction of the Guy Road Shared Pathway, Guy Park in Montague, pavilions for Phillip Island and Montague Croquet Clubs, New Haven Soccer Clubs, Montague Tennis Club, alongside lighting and funding towards the Phillip Island Library and the Cows Cultural and Community Centre. A further $2 million in funding was also successfully achieved for the Montague Activity Centre plan. It is a credit to everyone, officers, councillors and community members but our advocacy efforts are so well rewarded. Some other significant projects delivered through the 2020-2021 were the unanimous adoption of the Climate Change Action Plan and the commitment to the construction of the Cows Cultural and Community Centre. Despite all the challenges, Council was able to finish 2021 in a strong financial position, receiving unqualified audit certificates from the Victorian Auditor General's Office for Council's annual financial statement and performance statement. I'm incredibly proud to have led Council through this period and would like to say how much I appreciate the hard work of Ms Wasty, my fellow councillors and Council employees for the assistance and their efforts through the year. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tessari. Councillor Laing.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor Tessari really summed it up quite well. I just wanted to say that for my first year in council, it was really great to ride on the coattails of all the hard work that had gone on before me and to get us to this point. And I also wanted to just highlight that we had really good achievement in social inclusion with the celebration of Ida Hobbit Day when we raised the rainbow flag in front of council offices for the first time. So, but there's a lot of achievements that Councillor Tessari's already highlighted. So I wholly endorse this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Laing. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, I'll put that, those in favour. Against? Carried. H6, Planning Application 190385, 349 to 357 Church Street, Cowes, and ask Mr Sturton to introduce.
Mayor Whelan, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was abstaining in that vote, which you didn't recognise.
It's already been carried, but an abstention is regarded as the same as a thing, and there's a clear majority, Councillor Love.
But you didn't give me the opportunity to vote.
You could have called a division, Councillor Lark. I allowed time if anyone wanted to call a division. So it's noted, I think, that you abstained then. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yes, please.
Mr Mayor, if necessary, I'm happy to call a division.
No, it's too late to call a division. I've already introduced the next item, but I'm just taking it as a point of order, Councillor Barr. So no point of order, we'll move on. So H6, Planning and Environment, Mr Sturton to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and congratulations to you on your mayoral appointment. The purpose of this report is to present Planning Application 190385, which seeks to use the land and existing buildings for the purposes of a motel. The proposal also includes an additional 12 accommodation units and a general liquor licence. The matter is currently before the Victorian Civil and Administrative Tribunal. Council presided over this application at its February 2021 meeting, which was for a larger development. Since that time, the application has been amended, which is reflected in the plans which Council are asked to consider today. The amended plans demonstrate a reduction in the proposed accommodation units, an increase in on-site car parking to statutory requirements, and the removal of the proposed function centre. The application has been considered and assessed against the Bass Coast Planning Scheme. It is recommended that Council resolve to support the amended planning application and advise VCAT of its decision. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Can I have a councillor move that resolution? Councillor Rooks, second it. Councillor Tessari. Councillor Rooks, would you like to speak to the resolution, the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. First, I'd like to acknowledge the amount of work that's gone into this application by our council's officers. As Mr Sturton said, it came to council earlier this year in February, and at that point in time, it was a bit of an overdevelopment and was knocked back by council officers itself as a recommendation, and also knocked back by the councillors. I'm pleased to say now that with the summary that Mr Sturton gave, that the additional 12 pieces of accommodation and car parking and the actual use of the building as a motel and the general liquor license is all very appropriate and suitable for that site. So on that note, I wish the applicant well and support the recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Cesari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the words of Councillor Rooks. I think it's good to see when a developer or a consultant goes away and takes the advice of the people that have spoken, and they work to come up with a better solution. And it's a perfect example of it, and I will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cesari. Does anyone else wish to speak to this motion? If not, I'll put it. Those in favour? That's carried. That brings us to H.7 Planning Application 210142, 45 Grofam Court, Cape Woolamai, development of the land for dwelling over 7 metres in the DDO H.5 and Mr. Sturton to introduce the report.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present planning application 210142, which seeks to develop the land for a dwelling over 7 metres in height from the Design and Development Overlay 1 at 45 Grofam Court, Cape Woolamai. The application was advertised and received 8 objections, all of which were considered in the recommendations of this report. The application has been considered and assessed against the Vasco planning scheme. It is recommended the Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for application 210142, subject to the conditions as outlined in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Any councillor to move that motion? Councillor Halstead, seconded. Councillor Kent. Councillor Halstead.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I also would like to congratulate the Planning Department on their willingness to bring together the two parties and negotiate a good outcome. And this is another one where they have done that. There have been conditions applied after negotiations between objectors and the applicant. So it's within all of the planning schemes. The applicant has made an attempt to address the concerns of the objectors, and it's for that reason I will be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. First time I've used that phrase. Yes, look, I support this application. The majority of houses in the vicinity of this project are very modern looking double-storey houses. The height of this building is 7.994 metres. I think I'll just round it off to 8. And look, there was some objections related to views, but I would suggest that once the building reaches 7 metres, that if your view is going to be obstructed, it's already been obstructed at that height. I believe there's been a change with the roof line that has been reduced. Colour of the roof, I believe, is a slate grey or similar, which is less likely, in my opinion, to create reflection compared to any other colour you can get the colour bond roofing in. So in regards to the vicinity and what's already there and what's going to be there in the future, I fully support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? I will put it. Those in favour? That's carried. Which brings us to H.8 Planning Application 210217, 80 Panorama Drive, Cape Woolamai, and ask Mr. Sturton to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present planning application 210217, which seeks to develop the land for 2 dwellings on a single lot in the general residential zone at 80 Panorama Drive, Cape Woolamai. The application was advertised and received 5 objections, all of which were considered in determining the report's recommendations. The application has been considered and assessed against the Vasco's planning scheme. It is recommended the Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for application 210217, subject to the conditions as outlined in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Can I have a councillor move that recommendation? Councillor Kent and Councillor Holstead. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I fully support this application. It's in the ideal situation where there is a very wide frontage to this block of land. And I would suggest that when driving past this future development, you'd have to take a real good look at it to work out that it is two dwellings. There's similar examples of this type of project within Cape Woolamai, and I believe that for this location, this project is. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Holstead.
Nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Any other councillor wish to speak to this item? If not, those in favour? That's carried. Brings us to H9, Planning Application 210230, 8 Bilby Avenue, Inverloch, building and works exceeding 7 metres in height associated with a single dwelling in DDO. Mr Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present planning application 210230, which seeks to develop the land for a single dwelling in excess of 7 metres within the Design and Development Overlay 1, located at 8 Bilby Avenue, Inverloch. The application was advertised and received 13 submissions, consisting of 7 objections and 6 submissions of support. The application has been considered and assessed against the Vasco planning scheme. It is recommended that Council resolve to issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit for application 210230, subject to the conditions as outlined in the report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Can I have a councillor move that resolution, please? Councillor Tassari. Seconded, Councillor Laing. Councillor Tassari.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a big house. There's no doubt about that. No getting around the fact that it's a big house. But I've spoken to members of the community, and I've read this report. It ticks off everything that this report has covered, everything that needs to be covered. The people in the surrounding area would much prefer to see this development than what was originally going to go there and what is in place at the moment. So I will definitely be supporting this application, and I say to our planning team, well done on doing the best job they could with this development. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Tassari. Councillor Laing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just pointing out there were 7 objections, but however 6 submissions of support for this project. And VCAT had previously overturned a council decision to allow for 4 dwellings to be built on that site. So I suppose in one way this is a change that will, even though it's a big house, might make it less obtrusive than the original proposition. So I support this motion.
Thanks, Councillor Laing. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, those in favour? That's carried. H10, Planning Application 210232, 124 Tampa Road, Cape Woolamai, development of a dwelling exceeding 7 metres in the BMO and DDO 1. Mr Sturton, would you please introduce the report?
Thanks again, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present planning application 210232, which seeks to develop the land for a single dwelling in excess of 7 metres within the Design and Development Overlay 1 and Bushfire Management Overlay, located at 124 Tampa Road, Cape Woolamai. This application was advertised and received 22 objections. The application has been considered and assessed against the Vasco planning scheme. It is recommended that Council resolve to refuse to grant a permit on this occasion, based on the size and scale of the proposal within a sensitive coastal interface. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Sturton. Can I have a councillor move? Councillor Kent, and seconded Councillor Holstead. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I thought I better jump in quickly for that. I was going to get run over. Look, I'm going to mention again 22 objections. That's a huge amount. Spoken to the community down there, they don't want it. It's just too large, 11 metres in height, and there's no thought about the coastline whatsoever. Where do I go with this? It's just bigger and bigger and bigger than, I can't say much more than that. It's just not suitable for that area whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Halstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, our planning department have assessed this correctly, I believe, in refusing the permit. It is an overdevelopment of the site. I'd just like to point out we see a lot of objections based around the 7 metre height. And I just want to point out that the 7 metres is a trigger for a planning permit, but it doesn't necessarily mean that because the property is over 7 metres that it will be refused. It's still allowable as part of the planning conditions. But in this case, 11 metres, it's almost at city heights, really, isn't it? And in a coastal location, that's not what Vasco's is all about. So for this one, I will be supporting the officer's recommendation to refuse the permit. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Halstead. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Leticia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I agree with the officer's recommendation on this and my fellow ward councillors' comments also. I think that Councillor Tresari did say, the last one was a big house, but this is even bigger. So it certainly has a major impact on that coastal reserve and against some of the other environmental impacts it will have against the flora and fauna of that area. So I think that the right decision has been called for by the officers. So I'll be supporting their recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. So is there any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? If not, Councillor Kent, do you wish to say anything further on that? Okay, we'll put that motion. The those in favour? That's carried, which brings us to H11, which is the Foreshore and Bushland Reserves Vegetation Protection Policy. We've got a change of scenery now with Ms Kennedy to introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and congratulations on your appointment. Council currently addresses vegetation damage on public land managed by Council under the Vegetation Damage in Reserves Procedure for Action in 2008. This report recommends Council replace this 2008 procedure with a stronger formal policy to address unauthorised vegetation damage in Council-managed foreshore and bushland reserves. The benefits of the new Foreshore and Bushland Reserves Vegetation Protection Policy 2021 include providing stronger authorising environment for addressing vegetation damage in Council-managed foreshore and bushland reserves, clearly communicating Council's commitment to protecting vegetation on public land it manages, and separating policy from operational procedure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Kennedy. Can I have the councillor move that resolution? Councillor Rooks, seconded. Councillor Leticia. Councillor Rooks.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. This is an important policy. We have a stunning coastline and we have stunning reserves around that coastline. And with climate change and happening and the waters rising, it's even more important that we have our vegetation secured in our public land next to our waters. We are referring to public land here. It's not private land, it's public land, and people don't have the right to go in and destroy public land. This policy we had, the 2008 policy, was a good policy when it was introduced, but it just needs to be strengthened a little bit more. And this new policy does that. It will allow the council officers to follow up on any level of damage that's done to our reserves and our public space with regards to vegetation. And that's a positive step. I also wanted to mention that it's happening in the sense that just recently a new board has gone up at Cape Woolamai. And so people that do the wrong thing and damage our vegetation in our public land, there is a result of that, and that is a big board can get put up. And a 3x3 metre board recently got put up at Cape Woolamai, blocking the view that was created when a resident decided to destroy the roots of a tree, and that tree then fell. So we will, as council officers, take action should people do the wrong thing. I support this recommendation and this policy.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Lasserve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Rooks. I agree with your lead into this recommendation. You know, we do live in a beautiful area, and everybody seems to be vying for the view, and as they live along the coast, and the protection of that is vital. It's a habitat, and it's also protects the sand dunes and really protects our own infrastructure, usually that sits behind these. But if people continually whittle away at that vegetation and destroys it, it doesn't matter if it's in a major cutting down of trees or just using, you know, secateurs to get a better view for themselves. I think it's, well, it's illegal to do it, and I'm glad this policy will strengthen council's position to be able to address unauthorised removal of vegetation. So I endorse the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lasserve. Any other councillor Councillor Holstead?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be also supporting the recommendation, and I would just add that it might be an opportune time, given that we are adopting this policy, that we put a bit of education around those residents who are living on our shorelines, and so that they get an understanding that that vegetation actually holds the sand dunes together, and we are all very aware of the erosion that's taking place around the Shire. So to continue to remove this vegetation is only going to hasten that and add to that really frightening situation. So maybe some education. I would encourage people to do a bit of reading and understand what that vegetation actually does. And by removing it, it's, you know, it's impacting on our beaches. And we've already seen with Councillor Laing introducing her motion earlier, we really are at threat with our shorelines. So I just encourage people to educate themselves about the vegetation that surrounds our shorelines and what role it plays in keeping our shorelines, you know, helping to keep our shorelines where they are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I'm going to go one more step than Councillor Halstead. It's a blatant breach of the rules when somebody walks off their own property onto the beach and cuts a tree down. Unless these people are complete idiots, they know now that they're doing the wrong thing. And it's about time that we hold them accountable. I did a walk along the foreshore of Grantville the other week with some concerned community members there. And the number of pathways that have been cut through there so some selfish individual can have their view is unbelievable. And the erosion is causing the trees now to fall onto the beach. And yes, to these community members that have cut down their paths, you're going to have a fantastic beach view because the water's going to be lapping at your back door soon, and you can only blame yourselves for this. We are all educated in this already. So get your heads out of the sand, stop trying to make excuses for yourself, let's save the environment now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Any other councillor wish to speak to this motion? Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to actually take a different view on this. I've lived on the foreshore since 1981. I understand the necessity for a foreshore policy, but this new foreshore policy is a blunt instrument. It does not distinguish between a twig or a tree. In the briefings, we were shown examples of trees that were beautifully maintained to their best, and I can show you examples where council has been totally derelict in its duty to the residents have had no choice but to take matters into their own hands. As I said in the briefing we received by council officers. People who pay $1 million to get the $1 million view will factor in the cost for a tree or two into the purchase price. However, the overwhelming majority of Foreshore residents appreciate and treasure our Foreshore vegetation. This policy has not been discussed with residents and its effects, and we can be accused of lack of transparency yet again. I would like to put it out there. A briefing by councillors is not a mandate to act. We have the same modus operandi with the smart parking issue. We represent the residents, so let's include them on any decisions we make like this. I shall be voting against the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Any other councillor wish to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Rooks, would you like to have anything to say in reply?
Not other than I was going to give an emotional speech, but I thank Councillor Kent for doing that for me. So I'm happy to put it to a vote now.
Yes, some powerful words. Thanks, councillors. Those in favour? That's carried. So those against, I should say, give you a chance to put your hand up, Councillor Bauer. Yeah, that's carried. H12, big housing build regional funding round. Ms. Kennedy to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to seek authorisation from Council to make available identified surplus road reserve land for provision of social housing. The big housing build is a $5.3 billion investment by state government to create an additional 12,000 social and affordable housing dollars. There is a $25 million minimum investment guarantee for Vasco, meaning that at least $25 million worth of grant or direct spending by the state is applied to the Department of Social Housing in Vasco. On the 19th of October 2021, the state government released the Social Housing Growth Fund Regional Round Grant Program. This program is only available to registered community housing organisations. It has also identified 9 priority local government areas in this round, including Vasco. This report also seeks council endorsement to partner with 2 community housing associations, being Community Housing Limited and Salvation Army Housing. Finally, the report recommends that council delegate authority to the CEO to commence the statutory process to make the unused road reserves available for social housing and invite the identified community housing organisations to undertake due diligence on these sites. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Is a councillor to move this report? Councillor Laing, seconded. Councillor Rooks, Councillor Laing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very proud to be putting this motion forward for the support of councillors so that we can begin to realise the community vision and council plan by providing access to more affordable housing. One of our key strategic indicators is to increase the number of affordable housing available to enable an inclusive community that embraces lifestyle and supports health and wellbeing. Community Vision Priority 3.1 is that we have housing that is affordable and appropriate for all, and our council advocates and supports people facing homelessness. We don't have many tools at our disposal to provide affordable housing, but offering up unused surplus road reserves for these housing organisations to apply for state funds is one very clear way of signalling to the community that we are not just paying lip service to this issue. These road reserves have been reviewed by council officers and expert housing consultants and have been deemed suitable to begin the due diligence process. Currently, 5% or around 720 people in our Shire are on the Victorian Housing Register. It is clear that housing affordability is a major challenge for us. Almost on a weekly basis, we are hearing news reports about individuals who are being squeezed out of the local buying and rental market. In Wonthaggi alone, median house prices have gone up about 20% in the past 12 months as sea change, COVID and expensive Melbourne prices push people into the regional market. I have visited the sites listed in Wonthaggi and they look like any other block of land council gets housing applications for. The Salvation Army and Community Housing Limited are legislatively mandated to do the community consultation on these projects once they apply, as well as town planning and quantity surveyor reports. This opportunity will yield at the most about 16 dwellings. It's really the tip of the iceberg for those individuals waiting for a home. But it is a way that the council can signal it is taking this issue seriously and not just paying lip service to a problem faced by many in our Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Laing. Councillor Rooks.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan, and thank you, Councillor Laing, for those words. I think you've covered most of the things that I intended to say, so I agree with what you've said. I also want to add that I've visited the sites in Cowes, and again, they seem quite suitable. They are amongst residential developments close to Cowes, so they would tick the boxes thus far. We are an inclusive society. We talk about being an inclusive society, and there is a group in our society who are less fortunate than us, who require affordable housing or social housing, but they are part of our community. And they also need our support. They also deserve to belong to our community, and this recommendation gives us the opportunity to give them the opportunity to belong. I would hate to think that someone in our community got to the point where they required social housing and we weren't able to provide it within the Vasco Shire. And instead, maybe they had to leave our community, move away from their family, friends and their school, because us as a council and us as a Shire couldn't provide them with what they needed. So I hope we recognise that too in making this decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Lasserve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is an opportunity. It's something that hasn't come our way before, and I think it's very important that we support the recommendation. Homelessness just doesn't affect young people. You think that might be a bit transient and want to do their own thing. It affects all age groups, and even that hidden age group of older women also can be impacted by homelessness. I think it's important that we know that there are a number of, over the years, there's been many cases that I could cite to you of people having to move out of this area to get housing over in the valley. And because Bass Coast traditionally has very low stock of public housing or affordable housing. So I think this is a great initiative and we should embrace it. I think we should partner with these organisations and be proud that we're actually sticking to what we say within our council vision, our council advocacy documents. It's what we've spoken about. So I think it's now time for action on it. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lasserve. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I won't be supporting this strategy or this report at this stage, but I'd like to emphasise the words that I've used, not at this stage. We haven't finished our own social housing strategy yet. It's not completed and it won't be completed at least for a number of weeks, if not for a couple of months. We've been privileged to be given to our area $25 million for social housing. This can be used for the purchase of land to go with the housing, but by delivering the free land, it's a way of stretching the dollar. But it's my belief at the moment that we're not taking the community with us. Like Councillor David Rooks, I have walked the land on Cowes and spoken to adjoining property owners. And as you can imagine, they have concerns, but they also have concerns that where's our strategy too? So it's my belief that we have to take the community with us. And this report, I would suggest, allows some great commitment and costs and time by our council officers prior to actually letting the community know the outcomes. And I don't want to see wastage. And this is only in the first time that we can apply for this. Houses have got to be started by June 23 and completed by 25. We do have a lot of time up our sleeve, and I'd like to see the strategy complete, our strategy completed first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Any other councillor wish to speak to this? Yes, Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Kent just stole all my thunder. He and I actually walked the cows properties together the other day, and I was with him and we discussed this with local people. And it was Councillor Laing that actually said the most important words, appropriate. And I don't think that our strategies have yet identified the most appropriate plots of land for this. Yes, there are empty roads, but if you start looking around what's next to them, are they appropriate for that area? We will also get a lot of not in our backyard syndrome. I accept that. But I think that we're, just because they're dangling the carrot of all these millions in front of us, I think we have to move a little bit more cautiously and a little bit more in step with the community on this one. And I will also not be supporting this motion at this stage. But I'm not against the idea at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Councillor Luck.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I also walked the blocks, the road reserves in both Cows and Wonthaggi and North Wonthaggi. And I'm pleased that what's been targeted is a spread, not just in one particular area, but a spread across the Shire. I even saw where one particular road reserve had been virtually adopted by a next door neighbour through plantings and maintenance and so forth. And there seemed to be a sense of entitlement that, well, we don't really want any development of this nature to take place next door to us, not in our backyard, as Councillor Bauer has said. From time to time, council needs small wins. We've been talking about affordable housing, emergency housing, etc., for so long now within this council that there is an opportunity, and I implore councillors to vote in favour of this, to at least show good faith in terms of our commitment to affordable and emergency housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Is there any other councillor? Councillor Holstead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question in relation to the big housing build. Has the state government actually assessed what land they have in Bass Coast that may be suitable for building on for affordable housing?
Thanks, Councillor Holstead. I'll ask Ms Kennedy to respond to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, they have, and we've looked at both council and state government surplus land, of which there is not a lot that is suitably located within our municipality. These are the most appropriate parcels of land that we own, of which we can partner with the community housing associations to deliver under this current funding round.
Thanks, Ms Kennedy. Councillor Holstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I asked the question is it's been my understanding that affordable housing has traditionally been provided by the state government. And obviously, as a local government, we should and always will assist where we can. My concern is the cost shifting that's involved in us taking this on. Now, you might say that that's just about road reserve, but road reserve is a valuable asset that we would be handing over for the state government. I mean, at the end of the build, Mr. Mayor, can I ask whether the house then becomes the property of the state government, or does it become the property of the organisation who builds on it? Who actually then owns that road reserve?
I'll again defer to Ms Kennedy to give us an answer on that one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The road reserve, as proposed in the report, is to stay in our ownership and to be leased by the Community Housing Association on a long-term lease of 45 years. Generally, if you think about that, so in terms of built form these days, they usually last for a life of about 50 years. It would stay in the ownership of the Community Housing Association, of which they can use that as equity to leverage for future product that they can deliver into our community. At the end of that 45 years, there have been assessment made as to whether that is an appropriate site to continue with community housing. whether it's to be redeveloped or whether it's to be handed back to council for other uses, and that will be determined at the end of the lease.
Okay, Councillor Helston, have you?
Thank you,
finished?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would take from that in my lifetime, it's land that we will be handing over for the use of the different organisations. So it's pretty much us giving the land over for that period of time. So the reason that I'm asking this question is because the asset is a valuable asset, and there are lots of pressures on our budget. And I think that the state government should be contributing more to ensure that the land is provided for this building to take place. That's traditionally been what's happened in the past, and it just seems that it's a bit of a cost shift to local government. And when it moves over to local government, I'm thinking about the ratepayer dollars that are moved away from providing facilities that our community expect to a state government responsibility. In saying that, I do recognise that there's a need for affordable housing, and I am 100% supportive of council doing what we can to assist in providing that affordable housing. I do, however, think we need to have our affordable housing strategy completed. I'm often challenged through the planning schemes about strategic.
I'll ask you to wrap it up. Yeah.
Just a quick point, Mr. Mayor. Through the planning work, we're often halted at making changes because we haven't got the strategic work in place. So this, to me, is no different. This is another strategy that we should have in place before we start to make these, and there's going to be further opportunities down the track. So I don't understand the hurry on this when we know that once we've got our strategy in place, we will be able to apply again. So I will be supporting Councillor Kent in his refusal of this recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Holsted. Councillor Laing, you wish to respond?
Thank you, Mr.
Close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No doubt the affordable housing strategy will add meat on the bones of our plans for how we tackle this issue in the Shire, but the strategy is not an essential part to making this decision today. We don't need to wait for it to be finished to see that right now we have a clear chance for housing organisations to start building homes. They will be going through rigorous public consultation. In fact, one of the requirements of the big housing build is to ensure that development does not unreasonably impact on the amenity of adjoining dwellings. And a public consultation process needs to be undertaken by these community housing organisations in the process of undertaking the due diligence work to build the housing. We've had several briefings from council officers and consultants, and there's no denying there is a clear mandate for from the community for us to go ahead on this. In a sense, as Councillor Lark accurately pointed out, we have been talking about this for a very long time, and now is the time to take action. Delaying this any further will compromise what the community clearly want us to deliver on. And at the end of the day, this decision will start a broader conversation and give these organisations a real chance to build affordable housing in our Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Laing. So we'll put this resolution to a vote. Those in favour? Those against? The resolution is carried. That brings us to H13, Instruments of Appointment and Authorisation. Mr Mack will introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of this report is to recommend that Council appoint the named officers as authorised officers under the Planning and Environment Act 1987 and Environment Protection Act 2017, and to revoke authorisation to officers that no longer require it. The changes to instruments of appointment and authorisation will be made to implement Council's decision. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Mack. Can we have a councillor move that resolution? Councillor Kent and Councillor Rooks. Councillor Kent, do you wish to speak to the resolution?
It's nothing more than an operational procedure, Mayor Whelan. Thank you.
Councillor Rooks? Right, well, if everyone's in agreement, we'll put that to a vote. Those in favour? That's carried. That brings us to H14, Vasco Shire Council 2021-22 first quarter performance report. Mr. Mack, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report provides council and the community with an update on the first quarter performance for our annual action plan, capital works program and financial results, and include forecasts for the full year results. Council is currently on track to complete all of the annual action plan items. Council's year-to-date financial results reflect a surplus of 50.3 million, which is 1.4 million less than the budgeted surplus of 51.7 million. The variance is due to delays against the phased budget for the recognition of grant revenue, which will be rectified during the course of the financial year. Council's full year forecast operating surplus is expected to be 4 million more than the budget. This favourable projection is due to the unbudgeted capital grants totalling 7.9 million. When these are excluded, a full year adjusted underlying deficit of $3.3 million is projected. This reflects the impact of operating projects that have been carried over from the previous year, additional work cover costs associated with the dissolution of MAB Work Care Scheme, reduced user fees due to COVID-related closures, higher waste-related expenditure, cleaning costs and development planning costs. The total value of Council's capital works program, including carryovers and new grant-funded projects, is 67.7 million, and the projected full-year capital spend is approximately 56 million. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have a councillor move that resolution, please? Thank you, Councillor Vasari. Seconded. Councillor Brooks by Whisker. Lots of smiles, but not enough action there for a minute. Councillor Vasari.
Sorry, Mayor Whelan, I just looked away for a minute, expecting someone's hand to go up. I'm more than comfortable with this recommendation that's been put forward. We've had plenty of conversation about it. It's been overlooked by everyone, and I'm more than happy to recommend it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vasari. Councillor Rooks.
Sorry, I was on mute. No further comment there. Happy to receive the report.
Any other councillor wish to speak to the resolution? Councillor Laing.
Yes, I won't be voting in favour of this. One only has to look behind the detail, and it was mentioned by Mr. Mack that there is a 3.5 million underlying operating deficit. So that's a loss that we're talking about, very significant. Hopefully that's not a sign of things to come when we've been promised otherwise in previous briefings. Also, I do have the ongoing problem of capital works carry forward. And I agree with Mr. Jolly and other members of the community that this is a significant issue to be concerned about. So along with other aspects, I won't be supporting this first quarter performance report.
Thank you, Councillor Laing. Councillor Holstead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out that I have recognised the change in the language of the report, which I think the officers are attempting to provide reports that are easier for the community to understand. And I do know we have a ways to go, but I think that this report was definitely different to previous ones that I've read. And in relation to carry forwards that Councillor Lark is concerned about, it's my understanding that that is an area also that Council will be working on. So I'm just pleased to see there's some slow movement there. There are some changes occurring, and I think that we will continue to see further changes as we progress. And I thank the officers for the work they've done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Does any other councillor wish to speak to the resolution? If not, Councillor Vasari, do you wish to say further? Otherwise, we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. That brings us to H15, award of tender number 21031, construction works annual supply for plant, labour and materials. Mr. Mack, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following the tender for the renewal of the construction works annual supply contract, officers are recommending a panel of 4 providers, all of whom provided high quality submissions, submitted competitive schedule of rates and demonstrated that they have the necessary capacity, capability and experience to provide the required services. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Excuse me. Can I have a councillor move that report, please? Councillor Rooks. Seconded. Yeah, Councillor Sir. Thanks very much. Councillor Rooks.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. A lot of work goes into this report, and a lot of work goes into the decision that's been made by the council officers. And I enjoyed reading the process that you go through. It looks a very robust decision-making process. So congratulations. It's great that we've got 3 out of the 4 of the tenders that are going to be local. So that's good news for our local workers. And it's good to have options, as you've written, that we can rely upon should one business not be available for our works, and we can rely on a second one. So I think it's a very great process that you've done. Thank you.
Oh, yes, sorry. Councillor Sir, did you wish to speak to the resolution?
No, nothing further to add. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sir. Any other councillor wish to speak to this? If not, we'll put that. Those in favour? Carried. That brings us to H16, award of tender number 21032, maintenance works annual supply for plant, labour and materials. Mr. Mack, please introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following the tender for the renewal of the maintenance works annual supply contract, officers are recommending a panel of 8 providers, all of whom provided high quality submissions, submitted competitive schedule of rates and demonstrated that they have the necessary capacity, capability and experience to provide the required services. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. Can I have a councillor move that resolution? Councillor Rooks, seconded. Councillor Leticia. Yes, Councillor Rooks.
Thanks, Mayor Whelan. And again, it's similar process is done, or the exact same process is done to award these tenders. We have more this time, so we've got 8 different contracts awarded because we have such a diverse range of services that are required or jobs that need to be done. And this time we got 5 out of 8 local companies, which is great. Not all our local companies can provide the services we need, but we've done well to get 5 there. So I support this recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Rooks. Councillor Leticia.
No, nothing further to add, Mayor Whelan.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, Councillor Holstead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to reiterate and thank Councillor Rooks for pointing out that we are using local operators as much as possible. I think moving forward, that's really important, and I'm really pleased to see that we have many of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Any other councillor wish to speak to that? If not, Councillor Rooks, shall we put it to a vote? Those in favour? That's carried. That brings us to H17, award of tender number 21034, construction of rock revetment at Cows East, Foreshore. Mr. Sturton to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is to present a contract award for tender number 21034, construction of rock revetment at Cows East, Foreshore. This project is funded by Council's Capital Works program. A public tender process has been conducted and assessment made in line with Council's protocol and quadruple bottom line procurement policy. It is recommended that Council award contract 21034 to MAW Civil Marine Proprietary Limited, the contract sum of $2,373,416.30 plus GST, who represents best value for money. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Sturton. Mr. Sturton, can I have a councillor? Let's see the hand going up there pretty quickly. Councillor Bauer. And Councillor Rooks is the seconder. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just waiting for you to get the seconder there.
Yeah, no, I was a bit quiet there, Councillor Bauer. Sorry about that.
That's all right. It gives me great pleasure to introduce this motion to the chamber. This is a good news story. It's the accumulation of 7 years of work by the East Coast Foreshore Erosion Action Group with the unpronounceable acronym, which I'm not even going to try. The way this action group went about to bring this erosion problem to the attention of council, government, and the way they interacted with councillors is a model that other interest groups should adopt. It's a strategy that wins the day with smiles all around and avoids the combative approach with council which some interest groups use. The results is that the groins are being replaced, a revetment wall between Erwin Point and Coghlan Road is being built. I would like to take this opportunity to embarrass our new mayor, who worked tirelessly to get this fantastic result, because he is sitting in a chair and can't say a word. When Councillor Whelan was elected, he, together with Ken Haley, the chair of the East Cows Erosion Group, knotted out this action plan, and the problems in Silverleaf preceded the attention of Inverloch, which is now getting in before we even declared a climate emergency. I hope this outcome will be followed by other effective erosion measures which will be acted upon for Phillip Island and other parts of the Shire. I commend this motion to the Chamber.
Thank you, Councillor Blah. Councillor Rooks.
Nothing further to add.
Nothing further to add. Any other councillor wish to speak to this resolution? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I just wanted to mention a few years ago when Brett Desari and Claire Laserve would remember, we were spoken to by experts, and I asked a question then about cows and the surrounding area. Are we trying to save the beaches, or are we trying to save our homes and assets? And this is, to me, is a clear example of what the human has done to our environment. This wall will save our houses and our assets, but we shouldn't have to be putting up this wall if we're all doing the right thing. So it's more a statement about the environment, Mayor, that we need to act. We need to act fast. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. Councillor Lark.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there's quite a deal of bemusement in and around the Inverloch community and the Bunurong community generally about how quickly this work was done and funded, and particularly the choice of rock revetment, which has been put up by many members of the Inverloch community, and yet nothing seems to be happening in that area of the world. It's just, as I said, bemusing for many people that live in Inverloch that this is being achieved, and effectively and Inverloch has been left to languish, as per Councillor Laing's earlier notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lark. Any other councillor wish to speak to the resolution? If not, hang on, Councillor Holstead, nearly missed out.
Mr. Mayor, just quickly, I just wanted to pick up on Councillor Bauer mentioning that all the work that you have put into get this one off the ground, and how difficult it is for you from the chair to speak. And I think that that's probably going to be the biggest challenge for you in this role, is running the meeting and not being able to contribute to it. So congratulations to you, Mr. Mayor, on all the work that you did to get it off the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. If you want to shut him up, you're making the mayor. If there's no other councillor wishes to speak, I'll ask Councillor Bauer to close the discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I'll say is, remember, you can always make a statement from the chair. But no, I have nothing to add to this motion. I put it to a vote, please.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bauer. Those in favour? That's carried. That brings us to statutory reports, and I would request councillor support to move agenda items 1.1 to 1.4 as a block. Councillor Laing, Councillor Tesari, those in favour? Carried. So is there any item the councillors wish to take out of the reports for discussion? Yes, Councillor Laing.
Mr. Mayor, just confirming this includes the details of expenses, including reimbursement of expenses. That this is the part, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Great. I just wanted to quickly highlight that for me personally, I've got high car mileage, but part of that has to do with attending library board meetings that have to be held off-site and across the 3 council shires that are part of the library board.
Thank you, Councillor Laing, for that explanation. Does any other councillor wish to speak to any point? If not, can I have a council move that the recommendation attached to agenda items 1.1 to 1.4 be adopted? Councillor Bauer, Councillor Tessari, those in favour? Carried. Now, that brings us to urgent business, and I understand there is an urgent business item by Councillor Halstead in relation to the Circular Economy Bill being introduced already into the Victorian Parliament. So what we need to do is to put a motion to councillors as to whether council will accept the urgent business being dealt with. So I'm going to have a mover to move. Hang on, I've lost the plot here. Can I have a councillor move that we accept it as urgent business? Councillor Laing, Councillor Tessari. I'll put that. Those in favour? That's carried. So, Councillor, where are we? I'm lost. Can we have the?
This always confused me as well.
Yeah. Yes. So we got that far. Councillor Halstead, can we have you introduce your resolution, but without speaking to it, please?
Yes, councillors, my motion is urgent as it relates to the state government's Circular Economy Bill that has had a second reading speech in the Parliament Assembly and is to be heard in Parliament's Council likely this week if they get through the debate over the pandemic bill. It's really about.
Yeah, tell us what it's about.
It's really about the. No, have I lost you?
Yeah, you're still there. Thought we lost you for a minute.
Okay, so is that all you need from me, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, okay. So you're moving this resolution, and we have a seconder, please. Councillor Tessari. Councillor Halstead, I'll now let you speak to the resolution.
So I don't need to read the resolution. It's up on the screen. Yeah. Okay, so Vasco's Shire is committed to our climate emergency plan and have worked hard to ensure policies and strategies of Vasco's are keeping the protection of our environment at the forefront of our decision making. And the Victorian government has introduced the Circular Economy, Waste Reduction and Recycling Bill 2021 with a total lack of engagement or open consultation with local government, who have historically been the responsible authority in the management of waste. The legislation in its current form introduces Recycling Victoria as a new body designed to regulate rather than enabling local governments. This is, again, another blatant grab for power by the Victorian government. Recycling Victoria will have significant powers to direct councils, including in relation to procurement, service standards and data collection. Substantial penalties are attached to many provisions, signalling a new punitive approach by the government. All of these changes with no commitment of funding, therefore placing the burden on ratepayers who are already horrified by the waste management fees they are forced to pay as part of their rates. The fact that 80% of waste in Victoria is produced by construction and demolition, as well as commercial and industrial, yet this legislation fails to address these sectors, is testament that the heavy lifting will be forced upon ratepayers. I ask councillors to support this motion and send a message to the state government that Basque Coast will not accept their continued changes to legislation that have already shifted cost and will continue to whittle away the power of the people. We won't accept it from them, and we won't accept it from any elected government, Liberal, Labor, Greens or otherwise. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. Councillor Tesari.
Thank you, Mayor Whelan. I'd just like to say great work by Councillor Holstead and working with the staff to come up with this motion. This typifies what urgent business is all about, and I congratulate Councillor Holstead on the work that she's put into this motion, and I fully support it.
Thank you. Does any other councillor wish to speak to this resolution? Councillor Bauer.
I have a question, actually, through you, Mr Mayor, to the officers. If this is adopted, how quickly will it be transmitted into Spring Street?
No.
It's in Spring Street at the moment, Councillor Bauer.
No, you misstated the question. The recommendation, if your urgent motion is adopted, by the time it goes through the processes in council, will that take a week or a day? Because it needs to go there ASAP.
There's some collaboration going on here as we speak, Councillor Bauer, and what's my answer?
Through the Mayor, we'll be aiming to have it sent by the end of this week.
End of this week?
Let's hope it's quick enough. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Bauer. Do you wish to actually speak to the resolution, or are you happy with?
No, I fully support it. I think what Councillor Holstead has put together has been fantastic. And as you know, I've got an interest in curbside waste, and I think this is absolutely paramount piece of paramount motion. And I would urge that we can have it there by tomorrow night, personally. But if it's the end of the week, it's the end of the week. Thank you.
Councillor Bauer. Any other councillor wish to speak? If not, Councillor Holstead, would you like to close that discussion?
No, nothing further to add, Mr Mayor. I just thank Councillor Bauer for his input there, and if we can get the letter to the Minister as quickly as possible, as I said, it's likely to be debated in the council this week. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Holstead. So we'll put that vote. Those in favour? That's carried. That brings us to mayoral announcement of the next meeting of council. The next meeting of council will be held virtually on the 15th of December 2021, commencing at 1 p.m. It will be open to the public via live stream. And I have a motion now which I will read and then CK mover and seconder. That the meeting be closed to members of the public pursuant to section 6.6 of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider an item as they deal with A, council business information being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released. B, legal privileged information being information of which legal professional privilege or client legal privilege applies. May a councillor move that resolution, please? Councillor Bauer, seconded. Councillor Tesari. Are those in favour? That's carried. Thank you for watching live stream of council meeting. The meeting will now be closed to the public and then we'll end today's live stream. And I thank you all for your indulgence while I've got the training wheels on. The meeting will be adjourned.